The Federation is the oldest and one of the largest superpowers of the human civilization and elite dangerous. With a rich history stemming from Earth in the 2040s all the way to 3309, the Federation is a massive influence on human civilization as a whole. Adopting a corporate nature and an America-based constitution, the Federation has maintained its values for over 1,000 years. As the oldest superpower, the Federation's roots reach all the way back to World War III between 2044 and 2055. Started by needs and a desperation for resources and fossil fuels on Earth, many countries fell due to this nuclear war, but one victor remained fully intact using their laser defense grid, the United States of America. As such, many war-torn nations joined America to rebuild, eventually forming the United States of the Americas, with an S. As the world's countries joined America's Union, it was here that the corporations became much stronger as they could rebuild the world faster than governments using this thing called money. As such, this is the beginning of the Federation's corporate nature, which would fully integrate itself into the Federation over time. Once the entire world joined the United States of the Americas, they renamed themselves to the Federation. At this point, the Federation still retained American values and government structure, and even its capital remained Washington, D.C., and even 1,000 years later, most of these American influences survived. The newly formed Federation sought to expand to space due to the severe lack of natural resources on the radioactive Earth. Various organizations responded by expanding across Sol, discovering evidence of ancient Martian life, and sent 70,000 generation ships? Hold on. That's way too much. Probably more like 700, or maybe just 70. They were sent to scout out exoplanets to colonize and discover in nearby star systems. That was until the invention of the warp drive by a team led by Li Qinzhao in the 22nd century, which enabled faster than light travel. Though slow compared to the frameshift drive, it was still superior to the generation ships and stimulated interstellar expansion, especially from the corporate space races. After a period of colonization, Sol, Alpha Centauri, Altair, Tau Ceti, and Delta Pavonis signed the Federal Accord, the Constitution, which united all colonized systems to the Greater Federation in 2242. This is commonly seen as the founding of the modern Federation, which was the first interstellar government in human history. In 2296, Henson Duval established the Empire in the star system of Ashnar, sparking heavy anti-federal resentment, and shortly seceded from the Federation. Obviously, the Federation weren't too happy with a rogue government out of the control of a valuable Earth-like world, so they searched for reasons to take back Ashnar. One of the excuses were the fact that the first recorded intelligent race, the primitive Mudlarks, were wiped out by the Empire's quote genocide, though it is most likely due to foreign diseases. As the Federal Accord prevented people from massacring and destroying alien wildlife, it was a suitable excuse to retake the Empire, so they sent an interstellar attack fleet towards Ashnar to unite the Empire under the federal government. However, the fleet's fragile supply line and distance to support meant the Imperial forces took advantage of these flaws, eventually culminating into the defeat of the Federation in the Battle of Ashnar. The fleet was chased back to Beta Hydrae, where they could finally establish a proper resistance. This started the centuries-long rivalry and tension between the Empire and Federation, continuing even in 3309. From 2621 to 2735, a new war was waged, this time inside the Federation. The original settlers of planets and moons claimed the land and passed down their land to their descendants, therefore having significant power and wealth. The massive corporations, believing that they should obtain these vast deposits of resources, manipulated and bribed the government officials in the federal government to force down settlers' territories to the Federation's direct control, which could be passed down to the corporations later. The pressured federal presidents, likely blackmailed and bribed by the powerful corporations, were forced to support their cause and enforce the mandatory acquisition of hereditary territory. This was seen as unconstitutional and autocratic by many, urging them to fight against the corporation's smaller forces. In military technology and tactics, this war changed the Federal Navy by having many divisions of the Navy embedded in the corporations and governments, helping station units across federal space to rapidly react to many threats. Though the official government never really fought in these battles, they backed the corporations attempting to illegally hijack the colonists' planets. Eventually, all colonies were controlled by corporations and the government in 2735, ending the Birthright Wars. However, between the 2700s and the 3300s, there's really not much history in there, so I can't really write a lot of stuff. So now we're just going to skip to the 3300s. Jasmina Halsey was elected president of the Federation in 3300, who heavily challenged the onion head drug and waged a small war against it in Capital Fornacious. Her reputation fell after she failed to invade the system of Lug after it seceded, causing an all-time low for the federal president with a 16% approval rate. Her fate was also sealed when Starship 1, the ship of the federal president, went missing on May 26, 3301. In 3302, however, Halsey was rescued by search and rescue units commissioned by President Hudson. Halsey claimed that super sentient beings, similar to Guardians, had a peaceful encounter with her, inspired her to become a peace activist. In June of 3303, a federal convoy was destroyed by Thargoids, beginning the Second Thargoid War. The Federation, along with the Empire and Alliance, swiftly formed Aegis and supported each other for the first time in centuries. However, this alliance would not last long, and Aegis will be revived later. In the more modern-day Elite history, President Hudson voted in favor of an anti-Thargoid worship act that basically banned major cults such as the Far God, which worships Thargoids. This is considered unconstitutional and oppressive by many. Additionally, there will be a new president soon, with an upcoming election in August. The Federation's government is a constitutional democracy that is essentially based on the government of the United States. The representative body of the Federation is the Federal Congress, which has 500 congressmen from all regions of the Federation that were voted in by a popularity. Meeting in Olympus Village on Mars, these members are in charge of representing the best interests of the people, debating on issues, and organizing committees, similar to modern-day democracies that it's based on. Obviously, these congressmen also have a right to run for president, and often compete for votes and popularity to win the election. The federal president is voted in an election in which all eligible citizens of the Federation vote for the future leader, which can allow to reject new acts. Pretty obvious. He or she goes through an 8-year term with a vote of no confidence in between, similar to the 2 4-year terms that an American president has, with a possibility of being voted out during leadership. Though the Federal Accord bans the involvement of corporate entities in all aspects of government, these corporations use clever loopholes and tricks to manipulate the law into their favor, thus having access to bribery, blackmail, and corruption, which is still a large issue in the Federation, and therefore grants a majority of the influence and power to the corporations instead of the people. The society of the Federation is essentially a highly capitalist world with influences of a Western country. The hierarchy of this nation is based upon the wealth one person has. Though there aren't any rigid and official social classes, the hierarchy is manifested in the social form and is invisible but also obvious. Corporations take a majority of power, heavily influencing one's life in the form of products and advertising. Additionally, the efficient labor system drives the federal economy, making these companies the literal backbone of the Federation, generating trillions or even quadrillions in revenue. The culture, meanwhile, is very tolerant of things such as religions and other cultures, and seems to be based on Western nations today. However, it is intolerant of slavery, cloning, and drugs. The law here from the Federal Accord permits freedoms such as the freedom of religion, speech, and even more freedoms, which is heavily based on the United States Constitution and guarantees fair levels of freedom for all. Additionally, there is a federal court for justice that investigates and debates the final verdict for every suspect, similar to modern-day nations. The Federal Armed Forces, composed of the Federal Navy, a possible Army, and Marines, is the main military force of the Federation. The Navy is the primary fighting force and has thousands or possibly millions of ships in service, including the F-63 Condor, Federal gunship, and Farragut-class battlecruiser. A smaller division inside of the Armed Forces are the Federal Marines, who are responsible for on-foot combat on planets. Additionally, there is an auxiliary Navy service that allows independent pilots to do tasks and assist in combat for the Federal Navy. This concludes my video about the Federation. Hopefully, Commanders, this taught you something new about the Federation as a whole. I also plan to do videos on the Empire and Alliance as well, so look out for them. 07.